All right. Good morning, beautiful Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Desert, and friends all over the world, the planet, our home, Earth. Good morning, much love. Is it 10 o'clock? Are we there? Are we a little early? Are you here? Let me know you're here. Somebody let me know you're here. Let's see. It's a good day. It's Friday, July 462nd. I was going to have a couple surprise guests on my show today, but I got to just pop that bubble right off the bat because it's not going to work, unfortunately. Fortunately, whatever it is, what it is. So it's me. It's Life on Love with Reverend Charles, and we're going to see how much time we spend together today. It's going to be what it's going to be, and we're going to spend a little more time getting to know each other and enjoy each other's company here virtually. And let's see. I'm switching up my settings here. What am I doing? No, I don't want to do that. I want to do this so I can see the chat over there. So, good morning, buenos dias. It's a good day. It is Friday, July 17th. Did y'all file your taxes? You don't have to, that's not a real question. Just check it in. I don't think tax day was a couple of days ago. Here we are, Life on Love with Reverend C. Let's see what this morning holds for us. I've got a couple questions I want to ask you right off the bat to that are based on things that I'm going to talk about. But want to invite you into answering them as well. So like I said, part of what I want to do on Fridays is I want you to get to know me better, and I'll share some stories about my life and some things I've done. By the way, you see that beautiful picture of my daughter right there? That's her, what is that date? 2019. That's her first grade class picture. I don't think you can see it very well, but she's a beauty. Let's see. Calm Specimen, hello. Timid Self, good morning. Calm Being, good morning and thank you. Pondering Guests, we are here and looking forward to today's program with you. Thank you, everybody, for weighing in. I'm really grateful to be here with you as well. So as I mentioned, I've got a couple questions based on some things that I want to share with you and two main topics. I actually want to cover three main topics today. One is travel. I want to share some of the traveling that I've done around the world. So, you know, some of I've alluded to them a little bit, but share some stories within that as well. And also my religious history, spiritual history. I've gotten some interesting feedback and some things that I want to speak to generally with the community today. And so here are the questions. One, where have you traveled to? Or what would you say is one of the most exotic places you've been, or the most fun place you've been, or where you've had a totally extraordinary adventure, anywhere anywhere in the world, locally, across the planet? Where have you traveled to? Share with me. And then also, how have you integrated whatever your path has been, your spiritual path, with organized religion, exposure to various beliefs and ideas, you know, hanging out with a indigenous tribe in the, you know, Amazon rainforest and you know, doing some psychedelics and vision quests and all, you know, whatever you've done. What brings us generally, not all of us, but most of us, what brings us together on this call this morning together, whether you're watching it live or you'll be seeing the recorded version, is that somehow we practice the principles of Centers for Spiritual Living, the principles of the science of mind. And we all have a past. We all come from someplace. So I'd like to share in those two realms mostly today and see where that leads us. So the two questions are, where have you traveled? Where have you had an extraordinary adventure across the planet? And how have you integrated? And to integrate means to make whole, you know, to bring together into the whole of things. It's where the word integrity comes from, integrated, to be in our wholeness. So let's just start there since I'm on that. I think most of you know at this point that I was born into a Catholic family and was baptized Catholic. And interesting, I had a conversation with one of our community members yesterday, and we were talking about baptism. And the fact that in the Catholic tradition, one of the first things you do is become baptized, and it's based on this idea of original sin. And it's the craziest idea to me nowadays, because what beautiful, precious newborn baby is born into this world with sin? You know, I get the theology of it because I've studied in the theology of it, but the practicality of it and the awareness of it is, I see Brave Creation, India, North and South, right on. I have not been to India. My sister's been there, but it's definitely one of the places that is on my list. So baptism, I've always, since I've kind of grown on my spiritual walk, baptism seems so trivial to me now that somehow a brand new, beautiful life is born with this idea of original sin. I just can't get behind that. I'm all for original blessing, that we come into this world, this particular existence. And I'm not talking about past lives and where we go next and where we've been before and all that kind of stuff. I'm simply talking about our humanity and being on this physical plane right now. That the idea that somehow we're come into this life as sinners, can't get behind that. We're born into this life as beautiful, natural, extraordinary expressions of the living Spirit of God with pure potential to express all of our divinity everywhere. So anyway, that's part of, so kind of an aside. I'm gonna start with an aside, but yeah, Catholic family. And then I shared last week that I, went to Catholic grade school all the way through high school, went to an all boys Christian Brothers high school. I shared last week about the Encounter Retreat that I was a part of, and having that conversation with the priest at the time and how that set me free. So some of the conversations have been interesting that I've had this week. The more exposure that I have to you, the more you're exposed to the types of language that I use. I've got my, what I'm using, my face covering. This is a dual purpose for me now. I have one that I use as a sweat rag, and then one that I use as my face covering. So I've got it all covered with our things here. Yeah, I love that too. Original blessing. Calm specimen, born into Catholic family, professed into religious life as a. No, can you clarify that one for me? Calm specimen. Couple travel things. Brave Creation, India, North and South said that favorite vacation spot was cruise to Alaska and love Maui. Yeah, I mean Hawaii. Special. So as I've been exposed to, if I've shared with you more and been more in front of you, you've been exposed more to the language that I use. And I had some interesting feedback, and I'm always interested in hearing feedback, and then how, again, to integrate that. So how have I integrated my spiritual walk, my religious walk, into where I am now? Because I am certainly a practicer of the principles of science of mind. I'm a religious scientist and have been for a long time. I'm steeped in the principles of our Centers for Spiritual Living. And I also use certain words, and I had a conversation with some beautiful folks this last week about that. One of the words they picked up that I used was worship, or the word Lord, and some other things like that. And I know vocabulary gets people. I understand that, it does something to us. It's meant to be, oratory is meant to be evocative. It's meant to evoke something out of us. It's meant to do something to us. And what I want to say overall, so that where my heart comes from, is that I'm for this community big time. I am for each and every one of our hearts. And that's the only place that I ever come from. And if my language gets you in a certain way, I'm certainly interested in hearing that feedback, but I'm also interested in the process of integrating ourselves such that so for instance, one of the solutions when I was talking to these beautiful folks that we came to was what a solution or idea was, instead of using the word worship, why don't you use the word appreciate, which I can get behind. I can get behind that 100%. because it means the same thing. And even though I might use words that appear to, um, see, I love the word worship. Let's just do this for a minute. You can worship what I like. I worship my daughter, which can mean I appreciate her, absolutely. But there's a power in the word worship for me. It means I see her and I praise her, I raise her, I see her glory and her majesty, and I honor it, and I celebrate it. That's what worship means to me. And Lord, it's the same as using for me the word God, and I know that there can be, like, from coming from a Catholic background, it can be like a power that's out there or something, or the God entity that's someplace else. For me, it's integrated in such a way that it's always referring to the one power and presence. It's always referring to the one love. Like, I think we can understand that our relationships are better when we worship our partners. You know what I mean? Our friendships are better when we worship each other. And so I don't want to go too far down this particular rabbit hole, but I just wanted to speak to, again, that I've been in this spiritual walk for my entire life, being born into the family I was born into, and having been exposed to Christianity and studied, as I mentioned last week, read Paramahansa Yogananda's works and things like this, and so I just want to say that from my heart to yours, that my language might not always work for you, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. I worship that, and yet my heart is coming from that place of oneness. It's coming from the place of love and community and connecting with you. And as your associate minister at this point, moving into a different role at some point, whenever that happens, that my biggest interest is to serve you and to raise us all, to lift us all. See, but even that language right there could see that what do we need to be lifted into? What do we need to be raised into? But if we're ever in a point, which will happen when we're in the human walk, where we feel like we're down or we're depressed, our awareness, and again, this is semantics, but it's also kind of just where we come from. Our awareness needs to be lifted. Our consciousness needs to be raised. So if we're in a place of anxiety, like I spoke to a little bit yesterday, I noticed that my breathing was like shallow, it was shallow breathing, and I wasn't getting a full breath, and I've been going on for a while. That my call at that point was through the spiritual tools that I have to raise my consciousness to an awareness that everything is okay. Not only that, but everything is good, and I am blessed. So, so my commitment is to continue to lift our community into the love that we all are, and to have that be our fundamental awareness at all times. I've got some feedback. It's like, I don't know if many of you watch, I'm not going to share all the feedback about all the good stuff that people have been saying, because, then I look however I look. So this is a segment. This is Charles' segment of, if you watch Jimmy Fallon or it's on some other late night shows, they have this segment where they do mean tweets. Not that anybody's trying to be mean, but where they basically take the criticism that's coming toward them and they make light of it. And I'm not trying to make light of it. Well, I am a little bit, but not make fun of it or discredit it. But some other folks have said that I'm, maybe a little too Jesus-y or preachy, or, I don't know. But I just want you to know, the reason I'm bringing all this up is to not call anybody out, but to let you know where my heart is coming from, and that is to serve this community. And I come from where I come from. Hey, and look, I come from a family of fire. We call it, now I'm a hall, excuse me for that little commercial break there, that interruption. And I see all the comments here. I'm going to get to those in just a second. I'm a hall, but I come from a family of Johnsons. My grandparents were both Bill and Bets Johnson from Iowa. Duncombe and Stewart, Iowa. Anybody from the Midwest out there? So then they came west. But my grandma, so we call it in our family, we call it the Johnson Fury. That we've all tried to mitigate to our best, but it's in there. It's like part of our DNA. We got it. We got it from grandma, who, by the way, is I think she's 97. She'll turn 98 in October. She lives in Lacey, Washington. And certainly the fire isn't there like it used to be, but we all got it. I remember, now I'm just going to start, just kind of doing stream of consciousness here a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to show you this. So this is the cross that was given to my grandpa and grandma on their wedding day. If they were still married right now, it'd be well into their 60s, I think, 60 something anniversary. So, and then they gave this to me, which was just extraordinary. So I've had to put a little bit of work into it, because for a little bit there, Jesus got a little bit loose. And every once in a while I'd find Jesus upside down. And that's not what you want. You don't want Jesus upside down. So I had to get Jesus those are the moments for reflection. Like I come home and I see Jesus upside down. I go, oh my God, I got it. time for some forgiveness. Time for a baptism. Time for some confession. Anyway, so this they gave. So I've had this for a long time, and this was their wedding present that was given to them on their wedding. So I'm putting it back here real quick before it goes. So we have a fire that runs in our family, and every one of us have it. And my mom had it, my uncles, it's kind of what happened, and we do our best to not be controlled by it, but it's there. And so I think when I pray and when I do give a sermon, that sometimes that energy comes out, that passion comes out. Let's call it passion. It's not, a fire that like a fire breathing dragon or anything like that, but there's an energy that exists within me and the members of my family. I come from a pretty good sized family, that is fiery. And that's part of who I am. So again, Life on Love on Fridays with Reverend C, that's part of it, is to let you know who I am and where I come from. And so that, it's like when you do get to know somebody, you tell stories about who you are, and hopefully we find ways to appreciate each other. And that's what I want to do with you. And over the course of the last week or so, I've had more of these opportunities through these moments of feedback to get to know you better. And I love that, because not only you're sharing your feedback with me, but then we can share where we're coming from. And that's what we do to understand each other, is that we share, we give each other feedback, we share with each other, and then we listen so that we can understand each other. And that's one of my prayers for the world right now, is that we just listen to each other and where we're coming from, offer feedback, and then find a way to appreciate each other. That creates peace. It's not even agree to disagree. It's like finding a way to appreciate each other. Even if you don't agree, can there still be a heartful appreciation about who you are, that I can appreciate you and you appreciate who I am? And so that's where I'm coming from with regards to, how I talk, how I pray, when I get into it. I really feel the Spirit of God on my heart. And I'm a feeler. I'm a feeling guy. I've always been a feeler. I've shared with you that, I'm sensitive. So I'm a feeler. I feel, and I've felt the presence of God, of life, of love, since I was a little boy. And so I don't ever want to lose, and I'm committed to never losing that feeling, that connection, that intimacy, that raw, that emotion. And if you were with me with Patrick Rifflin a few weeks ago, whenever that was, we talked about, him being part of the worship team, the band at his Church of God in Christ in South Seattle. And we talked about one of the things that in this community, and one of the things I love is get in touch with people's emotions so that we can actually feel something. And that's healing. And I think that's why the music in our sense are so important. I think that's why a powerful message and the movement of our heart and our feelings, to get our feelings involved with something, is so important. It's like, when I see my daughter do something new, or she says something, whatever that moves me, it's just like I feel it, right? It does something to our emotions. Or when we hear a powerful piece of music, or a particular piece of oratory, or sporting event, two people, doing their very best at the highest level, or a, concert, whatever it might be, it does something to us. There's a movement of consciousness and a feeling and of heart. And I think that's important. So I'm rambling, but I hope there's something wonderful for you in the rambling. So I come from that. That's just some of the story where I come from, the background that I come from. Let's see. I have a hard time scrolling this sometimes. What have I missed? Let's see. Born into, okay. Love that, original blessing. Yeah, me too. I was raised Unitarian. Cool Human says, I was raised Unitarian in the 50s and 60s at a time when the approach was profoundly atheistic. That's what my parents wanted. But I, as a baby mystic, have always needed massive doses of God, God, God. That's why I love CSL so much. Amen. God, God, God. Brave Creation says, Matthew Fox saved this Catholic girl. Matthew Fox, that's some rich stuff. That's great. Study Matthew Fox, for those of you out there. That's there's a powerful consciousness right there. Calm Being says, I like worship too. Yeah, amen. Adair, love the power and the presence. Yes, the power and the presence, right? It's like the fire and the calm. That's how I interpret that, Adair. Cool One says, my spiritual search began at age 10 when at a Lenten Mass, we were informed by the priest who told us we were horrible sinners. Inside, I heard that isn't true. God loves you. And so my search led me to Science of Mind. Thank you. See, that just gets my emotions. Because if anybody was to walk up to my daughter and say, you're a horrible sinner, I can't even say out loud what I'd want to do to that person. And to anybody, actually, like, who out there is a horrible sinner? I mean, it pisses me off, actually, that there's theology in the world that exists like that, which actually inspires me. And if you were with us yesterday, being pissed off is not a bad thing. It actually can inspire us into action, anger. Who out there's a horrible sinner? There's people out there doing horrible things, no doubt about it. Let's be clear. There are horrible actions happening out there. But within principle, one of the things that we can bring to human consciousness, in principle, that you and I can bring to human consciousness, is that at the heart of every single person, there's goodness and beauty. And that what we have to do is sometimes we have to celebrate it when we see it, and if we don't see it, pull it out of people. We have to pull it out of somebody. We have to call them forth. Many of you may have heard this story that in certain African traditions on the continent of Africa, that in certain communities, if one of the children or if anybody in the community makes a mistake or goes against the family or the community or does something that they would interpret as quote unquote bad, that instead of punishing that individual, they put that person in the middle of the community in a circle kind of setting, and they tell stories about that person and how beautiful they are. They tell stories about when that person did something wonderful and beautiful for the community, for the family. They tell stories about when that person gave of service. They tell stories about how wonderful and magnificent they are. Why do they do that? To remind them of who they really are. That we always get off the beaten path. Not always, but there will be times when we do. There will be times when we forget who we are and we make a mistake. I've made plenty. I continue to make them. I don't want to make them as much, but I do. Times when I forget. There are times when we all forget. And what we've become so accustomed to is to punish each other, rather than reminding each other of who we really are, rather than reminding each other of our beauty. That you made a mistake, yes, but you made a mistake because you forgot who you are. You made a mistake because you forgot that you are an original blessing, not an original sinner. And what does that do? It brings us back to our magnificence. It brings us back to our purity. It brings us back to our essence. Amen to that, right? Brave Creation says, I love that you integrate your Catholicism. It is all love. Amen. And there are certain things, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about a particular Christian theology, and we broke it down and dove into it. And one of the things we get to do with life in general, folks, is pick and choose what works for us as we determine our own personal theology, our own personal makeup of what works for us, integrating spiritual principle, integrating the things from our history that work for us, discarding the things that don't work for us, and moving forward powerfully. So we get to do that. Quick water break. Water, nectar of the gods for the soul. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit. Where have you traveled? Where have I traveled? Travel, one of the things I travel's a little different right now. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But when we are able to move freely, travel's such a beautiful thing. My most recent trip, again, as I think I've already shared with you, was last May to the Philippines. Took 2 weeks and did some, the first part of our trip was actually to a small town where the Brothers of the Holy Cross, calm being, we could learn a lot from the story of the tribe, that to help people, a reminder of who we really are. Absolutely. Make that a practice. Make it a practice. So a small town that I think, if I remember correctly, it's the Brothers of the Holy Cross created a community for, this one's particularly for boys, young boys, well, anywhere between, I would say, 5 and 18 that have been orphaned for one reason or another, just left on the streets or whatever. But there's the 2 women that run this community, and they built it from nothing, from scratch, with their own hands. And they tend to the earth with their own hands. They grow crops, and they go to school. They grow crops. They have animals that they tend to, and they're teaching these boys to be self-sufficient. And it's out in very, very humble lifestyle. I mean, they've accessed running water, which is a beautiful thing. But, between, I think there were 20 boys there, something like that, 10 boys to a room on the floor, just tending to the land and teaching these boys receiving love and care. And again, teaching them esteem and the dignity of being a human being, that there are people that love them. And I love that. And it's not a missionary. Some might call it a missionary. I'm not a big fan of the word missionary. I know, Christian traditions are missionaries. I'm a big fan of the word compassionaries. And that's what I see happening. There's just a tremendous amount of compassion and the dignification. Is dignification a word? To look it up real quick. The dignifying of a human being. So we spent the first half of the trip there doing that, and then the second half at this beautiful location on the beach, doing just some deep internal work, which was extraordinary. And the Philippines is a magnificent place. If you haven't ever been, I would encourage you to check it out at some point. It's wonderful. So what else have I been? I've been to Scotland, which is extraordinarily beautiful. And I've been to the home of golf, St. Andrews. I did not, at this point, I took 3 months after I graduated the School of Ministry back in my early 20s. I realized I wasn't ready to be a minister quite yet. I wanted to season myself a little bit, just cook a little bit longer. And I wanted to put myself in situations where I didn't know anybody and people didn't know me. So did the old backpack thing, left for 3 months, and did exactly that, with the exception of a story I'll tell you in just a moment. So started that journey in Scotland, went to St. Andrews, which is the home of golf, but didn't have my golf clubs because I didn't want to lug my golf clubs around for 3 months. So I didn't play golf there. So that's still on the list. And people have said I'm crazy. And yeah, that is crazy that I was actually there, walked the golf course. This is in the middle of winter. It was, when was it? Well, no, well, yeah, it was the middle of December, I think is when it was. So can you imagine Scotland, the east coast of Scotland, in December just on a wintry day, cold, overcast, kind of almost a misting rain, sort of. I'm all bundled up, and it was magical. And the village of St. Andrews is fantastic. So then I took a train around Scotland, did that for a little bit, met some extraordinary people, and noticed. So I was in my early to mid 20s. When I was doing this, so part of the mission of it was I want to put myself in a position where I didn't know anybody, people didn't know me, and see what I was made of. And it was so interesting over and over again, even in I use this word lovingly, benign country of Scotland, how I was confronted with fear over and over again. It was my first time, not my first time out of the States. I'd been to Canada. I'd been to Canada before, but my first time overseas. And even to open my mouth to have people hear that I was from the States was confrontive. It was the wildest thing. And then, of course, I continued to confront my, fears and just that I was alone and would I be able to have my needs met and all this. And of course, here I am. So obviously my needs got met. So I did Scotland, came back to Edinburgh, which is my home base. And then from there went and visited my cousin, who at the time lived in Budapest, Hungary. So this was the one part of my trip where I did know people. Well, actually two parts of the trip where I knew people. So my cousin and I, we hung out in Budapest for a few days, and then we decided to take a trip down through Serbia, where he knew a friend, into a town called Novi Sad, where we spent Christmas, actually. And here's an awesome story. So we spent Christmas in Novi Sad, Serbia. And this was back right after NATO had bombed Serbia, which was, the old part of the old Yugoslavia, because of Slobodan Milosevic and the Milosevic regime and the ethnic cleansing and all those things that were happening right after that, just within a year. So we took a train from Budapest, Hungary, down to Novi Sad to stay with his friend for a couple of days. Spent that Christmas there. And I had the blessing, the absolute, this is why I love traveling kind of off the grid, not really doing a tourist thing, but traveling off the grid. So there was a couple I got to meet who had been married for about 7 years, but because they were an inter-race couple, they couldn't tell anybody, even their parents. Nobody knew that they were married. And so and then once Milosevic came out of power, then they could tell anybody. They weren't afraid of what would happen to them anymore. So I met them, and we got to sit, me and my cousin sat in the loft of their apartment. Well, they were just telling stories about like being in Sarajevo and being in other parts of the country when it's still Yugoslavia, and coming home over a mountain range and seeing bombs exploding off in the distance in their home, where they live, and the fear that was there and them not knowing what was going on. And so here I am, I'm just like sobbing, crying as they're telling these stories, feeling them, just having compassion for them. And so that's the first night. One of the first nights we spent there was that evening with them. The next night, we got to go to their wedding party in a tavern, in a bar they had rolling blackouts at the time because the infrastructure was still kind of getting back on its feet. Rolling blackouts so from time to time the power would just die, and this place was jam packed. There must have been 200 people packed into this tavern that could probably hold about 200 people. And everybody was smoking. I wasn't smoking, but the place is just filled with smoke. I mean, imagine like an old spy movie or something from the 80s or 90s where everybody smokes and it's kind of dark, but the place, something like that. It was romantic. It was magical. It was mysterious. It was everything. It was fascinating. And these folk, because of it was like the pent up energy of 7 years of these folks not sharing with anybody their love. And then the eruption, the explosion that happened. And I got to be there because of my cousin's friend. And so it was all the words I just mentioned, and then it was totally undescribable at the same time. And part of what was there was a band that had what is this? The accordion, the stand-up bass. What other instruments were there? And every piece of music was the kind of like what you'd hear at an old school Serbian wedding, where everything starts kind of slow and it's dun, 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 and by the end of it, it's just whooped into a frenzy. And this was the music that was happening all night long, and people were dancing and hugging and in love and in so much joy, and I got to be there for it. And that's one of the magical things I love about traveling. That and like what I got to experience with those boys in the Philippines, and getting to know them and how they're learning to be dignified, and aren't those magical moments of travel? So from there, continuing down, I went from Serbia into Bulgaria. What we were doing is making our way to Turkey is what we were doing. So then after that, we went to meet my cousin's girlfriend, her family lived in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. And so the idea was hatched to go spend New Year's on the west coast of Turkey, Kuşadası. And so we hopped on a bus with a busload, 50, 60 Bulgarians, and my cousin and I, on a bus to the east coast of Turkey, or the west coast of Turkey, where we brought in the new year on the west coast of Turkey. And went there, did that. And this was like I don't know what it was, how far that was, a 20 hour bus ride, something like that. It was actually excruciating, but we found a way to pass the time and make it fun and all that. Had that, and then came back. And then what did I do after that? I went to, Poland and the Czech Republic. I hope I'm not boring anybody right now. Please let me know I'm not boring you. I'm trying to entertain you, give you some history. And then I went back to Scotland just for a night, and then to Brussels, where I flew down to Accra, Ghana, where I spent 3 weeks on the west coast of Africa. And I shared with you, I think, about the plane ride from what happened, with that woman and her little baby on the plane ride from Brussels. Was it Brussels or was it Amsterdam? I don't think it really matters at this point. I can't remember, though. Down to Accra, Ghana, where I spent 3 weeks with a man named Brother Ishmael Tete and his family. I went and explored Ghana on my own, and did something called soul processing for about 5 days, which is, anybody knows that when you've done like intensely deep interpersonal work, it's life-giving and freeing and excruciating all at the same time. And so it was 5 days of just diving in deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the experience of my life and my soul and what lives in there and all these kind of things in order to get more liberated. And it was just fascinating. So let's see. Where else have I been? I've been to Cambodia in my old, here, let's see. Isn't Turkey an amazing country? Totally amazing country. Absolutely amazing. And the history that's there as well is fantastic. Let's see. Brave Creation. I had the beautiful Catholic Mass in a small village in Ghana. The expression of joy and love was palpable. Also able to work at a small hospital there as a nurse. That's awesome. Isn't that just, that's the bee's knees right there. That's the good stuff. You know what I discovered out of that is that we are one human family doing our thing within the context of our culture. That's what we're up to. we're all doing the same thing in the context of our culture, providing for our families, searching for meaning, uh, contributing, seeking places to contribute. And so, some places are different than others. So, there's levels of survival. Um, and yet it's easy to see when we travel that we really are one human family. The principle of oneness demonstrates itself that we are one human family. We're one, doing the same thing. We're living, we're alive, we're here. And we don't see that through social media and our bickering and our divisiveness and all the stuff that we can get caught up in. We're one human family. And we need to keep piercing through that. So one of the things, the other things I did a number of years ago was in my previous community, I took a group of about 30, 35 people to Cambodia, which was 2 weeks of service and relaxation, which was extraordinary. And we went to Angkor Wat, which is beyond words as well. One of the 7 wonders of the world. I believe it's one of the 7 wonders of the world, Angkor Wat. Huge temples, and then there's Angkor Thom as well. And it's just acres and acres and acres and acres and acres of temples and shrines and beauty and these extraordinary things. So we were there. The first part of the trip, again, we broke it up kind of into 2 halves where we helped build a school when we were there, and brought supplies and things for families in this very rural area, and helped build a school and did repairs to a school and things like that, and interacted with the children and just dug some wells. Man, I wish I could share it. I should have had this ready. I wasn't prepared to share it though. I've got a picture of a well that I helped dig and fund and things like that. And pretty cool stuff. Where else have you traveled, folks? Is anybody out there want to share where you've been and what you've done? And then, of course, around the States, too. Even within our country, we have a bunch of fascinating cultures within our country, and fascinating ways of living and being, which are excellent. And of course, I've been to Mexico as well, a number of places in Mexico. And actually, Julia, I say we, but Julia has some family about 3 hours north of Mexico City in a town called Querétaro. I always struggle saying it. Every time I say it around her family, they always correct me because the emphasis, I think, is on the Querétaro. Querétaro. Magnificent city right in the middle of Mexico. And from there, you can go, there's 7 or 8 villages that are within an hour and a half drive, which are just fascinating. Beautiful little villages. And actually, interesting fact, in one of these villages, there are 2 monoliths. The way I understand it, there are 2 monoliths that exist in the world. One is that big old rock. What's it called? Ayers Rock? What's the one in the middle? Somebody tell me. What's the one in the middle of Australia? The monolith. Is it Ayers Rock? Will somebody comment in and let me know? I don't want to look it up on my phone, because we can always look it up on our phone. But then Big Rock. Is it called Big Rock? I think it's got a name to it too. Someone said Big Rock. It is a big rock. It's a monolith. The other one is in one of these villages right outside of Querétaro. Querétaro. The other monolith in the world on the planet Earth, which is fascinating to me. I think it's Ayers Rock. So another cool little point. And that's so. And then of course I've done some beach communities in Mexico as well, and. But there's so much more I want to explore. I mean, everything's on my bucket list. It's all there. I want to, touch everywhere in the world. So any questions, comments? How are we doing? Are you still with me? Anybody out there snoring? I hope not. If you are, take a picture of it and put it in the comments too, so I know I can up my game for next week. But again, this is Life on Love with Charles, just sharing stories. And I thought sharing some stories about my travels would be fun, and some experiences with that. And also the kind of my religious background and history to let you know where I'm coming from. And that's what's up. That's what I've got for today. Anybody? I'm not getting off of this call until somebody tells me what the big rock in the middle of Australia is called. Somebody type it in. The monolith. Monolith in Australia. Any questions? Any other places you've traveled? Still here and enjoying a little more about your life. Thank you so much. All right, are you guys gonna make me look this up, or do I just need to be a little bit more patient here? Maybe I just need to be a little bit more patient. Any prayer requests? Anything I can know with you, for you? Anything, because I've really reached the end of what I want to share with you today. So let's just sit here in silence and enjoy the silence together. Oh, one of the Uluru. CSL Palm Desert says Uluru. Okay, Uluru, right on. Let's see, I think was I just going to say something? I can't remember right now. I love being with you all. Where was the top spiritual experience? My top spiritual experience? It's really hard to say. Top spiritual experience. One of them was meditating at Angkor Wat in Cambodia, for sure. Meditating in Cambodia, for sure. In Angkor Wat. Just being with those boys that I mentioned in the Philippines and seeing their joy with having really nothing, not complicated by all the things that complicate our life. And one's not right and one's not wrong, but just the simplicity of how they live, and to witness that. Timid Self, or also known as Ayers Rock. Okay, cool. Uluru or Ayers Rock. Thank you very much. Now I'm free to sign off. Peace out, everybody. Just kidding. Let's see. Uluru Kata Juta National Park. Cool. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So yeah, so meditating at Angkor Wat, being with those boys in the Philippines and experiencing their life. Certainly some of the work I did in Ghana. But I think one of the highlights as far as a spiritual experience was that wedding party I got to be at in Novi Sad. It was euphoric. That's the word. It was euphoric. An extraordinary experience it was. So my stuff's all about people, really. That's where I really get my juice is experiences I have with people. And I think I could point to any number of experiences I've had with people traveling that I would call absolutely a spiritual experience. A heightened spiritual experience. All right, gang, that's what I got for this week. I'm really working on having the guests show up, okay? I don't want to tell you who was going to show up today because it just didn't work out because they decided to go someplace where they don't have internet access. If you can believe it, there's still places like that exist in the world. But I'm working on it for next week. Just some surprise guests to help juice it up and mix it up. And we're going to keep doing this thing. See, I didn't know where this conversation was going to go today when we jumped on here. I didn't know it was going to, we were going to go to these places, but I'm so glad we did. And I pray that you're beginning to feel my heart a little bit more, that you're feeling my love, my commitment, getting to know me a little bit more, where I come from, what I'm interested in, what I'm up to, and that genuinely what I'm interested in is serving this community and loving all of you and receiving your love. As I've said from the beginning, I am interested in loving you, and I welcome your love as well. And I will continue to be amazed and not all at the same time. But that's what Dr. Tom used to say to everybody. And that when I came down here, I said the exact same thing. As a commitment of my heart. Cool One says, thank you, Reverend Charles. I needed this trip you gave today. You brought me out of my four walls at home. Amen. Thank you for that. I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm glad that I did, Cool One. You're very welcome. And thanks for listening and tuning in. So let's see, how do we wrap this thing up? Tomorrow we've got a meditation for you at 10 o'clock, and then another sort of out of the box Sunday service that we're going to present to you. I pray that you're enjoying those and you'll enjoy this as well. And love the continued conversation. Next week, we've got a tremendous lineup of individuals, and I continue to work on the schedule. If anybody has any ideas of who you'd love to hear from on these things, would you shoot an email into the office? I don't Elizabeth, are you on here? Do we have I should know this. I'm going to out myself right here, but do we have an info@cslpalmdesert.org? If I send an email there, we have an info@cslpalmdesert.org, or somehow go to the website and find our contact form, our contact page. If you have any ideas, I'd love ideas of who you'd love to hear from, who you'd love to hear me have a conversation interaction with, that you think would be beneficial and meaningful. I'm totally open for ideas from you all about how we can continue to have some fun in this format, nurture and support our community. So yeah, Jamie Lula concert and conversation with my brother on Monday. Continue with the book study with Jafon on Tuesday. Sensational 6 on Wednesday. Very excited to have an extraordinary man, Dr. Will Coleman, join me on Thursday. And then again, next Friday, Life on Love with me. And we'll see where that goes. And again, I know we say this every day, and I pray it doesn't get old, but I want to keep the invitation out there that we really depend on you to support the center financially, to keep things rocking and rolling. We don't want to go backward ever. We want to keep evolving forward. And so we continue to appreciate your financial gifts through the website, through calling into the office, through mailing into the office. You can get all the information about that on the website. You can text in your tithe, and if you're able to give, give what you can give and feel really good about it. That's the thing. Give what you can give and feel really good about it. And if you can stretch just a little bit and give a little bit more, it would really help the center right now as we continue to navigate these waters and do it together. Woo! We almost filled up another hour, gang. That was awesome. All right. It's 10:52. I'm loving you. That's all, boo-boo. Have an extraordinary day and make it the best day ever. Peace.